Hello, everybody. Come on in. Today we are discussing the Dan Markel case. We're continuing on with our series, and this is episode 7. We're talking about Charlie Adelson's role in this case. So Dan Markel was born on October 9th, 1972. Just to give you a little bit of a background, he was a Canadian-born attorney and a law professor who wrote various works on retribution in criminal law and sentencing, with a focus on the role of punishment in the criminal justice system. It's kind of ironic since everything that he went through. He was working as a professor at the Florida State University in 2014 when he was unalived in a Big M for hire, motivated by child custody issues following his divorce from Wendy Adelson, a clinical law professor and child advocate. She was also employed at the Florida State University at the time. And this is Wendy. Okay. All right. 4 individuals have been convicted in the case. Charlie Adelson, who is on the right here, was Wendy Adelson's brother, who was Dan Markel's brother-in-law, and 3 others. So there was Sigfredo Garcia, who was the one to the far right, Katherine Magbanua, and Louis Rivera. Okay. Now, Charlie Adelson on the right was convicted of first-degree M, conspiracy to commit M, and solicitation of M, and sentenced to life in prison plus an additional 30 years for the conspiracy and solicitation convictions. Sigfredo Garcia was found guilty of first-degree M, the one on the far right, conspiracy to commit M, and sentenced to life in prison. She was on trial with Katherine Magbanua in the middle was on trial with Sigfredo, but it was a mistrial was called. It was a hung jury. On her second trial, she was convicted, found guilty of first-degree M, conspiracy to commit M, and solicitation of M in a retrial, and sentenced to life in prison plus 2 consecutive 30-year sentences. Louis Rivera, who's on the far left, pled guilty to second-degree M and was sentenced to 19 years in prison. Okay. Donna Adelson, on the far left here, is Wendy's mom and Dan Markel's ex-mother-in-law. Okay. So she was arrested at the Miami International Airport on a warrant from Leon County, and she was flying to Vietnam, a country with no extradition treaty with the U.S. She is charged with first-degree M, conspiracy to commit M, and solicitation of M. Her trial date was originally scheduled for September of this past year, but it's looking like it's going to be in February now of 2025. What's interesting to note is Wendy Adelson, Dan's ex-wife, nor her father, Harvey Adelson, have been charged, but both have been named by prosecutors as conspirators in the unaliving of Dan Markel. So I want to encourage you guys, if you have never seen this case, heard about it, go back to the beginning, right? I always give kind of an overview, but today we're going to be talking about Charlie Adelson's role. He was kind of the kingpin, if you think about it, because he was the one that started it all. I've been trying the last few days trying to figure out how to tell the story of Charlie because there's so much out there. And it could take hours and hours, but so Law and Crime, the sidebar with Jesse Weber, did a really good job of piecing it all together and just showing bits and pieces. Now, we're going to listen to this video and discuss it as we go, but I'll probably do at least one more video on Charlie Adelson because I'm going to show parts of some of the people's testimony in this case that weren't shown in this video with Law and Crime. Because I think it's important that you guys see it all because we're heading to Donna Adelson's trial coming up in February, right? And so I think it's important that we have a good background of just what was going on in this case, right? And so we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to share my screen with you. And let's get started. Did you have any contact with the thugs that were getting your money for 2 years?
No.
Did anybody put a gun to your head?
I was told that I would be killed in 48 hours if I didn't pay up.
I heard you say that, but my question is, did anyone put a gun to your head?
You asked me, did anyone pull a gun on me?
That's what
Is that your question? No, nobody pulled a firearm on me.
It has been a fascinating trial for Charlie Adelson, the man accused of orchestrating the plot to murder FSU law professor Dan Markel. From a shocking opening statement to tense cross-examination to secret recordings to the defendant on the stand, we do a full trial recap of the major moments. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. There was a trial that we were covering, huge deal, very high profile. In fact, for me personally, I have been following this saga for years. And now, with the end of this trial, I wonder, is this the end of everything? Maybe, maybe not. We'll get to that. I'm talking about the criminal trial of Charlie Adelson. So we are going to do a full trial recap in case you missed anything from it, showing you some of the major moments from beginning to end. But before I even do that, I got to explain the backstory to you because it is very complicated, but stay with me. So back on July 18, 2014, Florida State University law professor Dan Markel was shot to death in the garage of his Tallahassee home. It turns out that the shooting was carried out by two men, known gang member Luis Rivera and his associate Sigfredo Garcia. They had driven from Miami to Tallahassee. You can even see surveillance footage of them in a rented car and following Markel as he was doing his errands before he was killed. Come to find out that these men were hired and paid to kill Dan Markel. You see, according to Rivera, the mother of Garcia's children, a woman named Katherine Magbanua, set up the murder, or she was acting as the middle person in the murder. Now, why would this random woman want Dan Markel dead? Well, she was dating Charlie Adelson, Dan Markel's former brother-in-law. Charlie was a periodontist at the family dentistry practice. You see, Dan had been married to Charlie's sister, Wendi Adelson, and Dan and Wendy, they divorced. They were in the middle of this bitter custody dispute over their children. To give you an idea of how tense this was between Dan and the Adelson family, Dan at one point petitioned the court to prevent Wendy's mother, Donna Adelson, from being allowed to be with his children unsupervised. He believed that Donna was bad-mouthing him to them. So investigators believe that Charlie was the one that orchestrated the killing, facilitating the payment of $100,000 to be shared by Magbanua, Garcia, and Rivera. In fact, Magbanua was depositing these large sums, these large checks from the Adelson dentistry practice into her account, and these were checks that were signed by Donna Adelson. And the evidence of Charlie's involvement is very interesting. There was a comment that he allegedly made to Wendy when she and Dan broke up, where he said to her, buying a TV was cheaper than hiring a hitman. There were recorded phone calls and conversations between Charlie and Magbanua that were very suspicious. I mean, one of the biggest pieces of evidence was this secret recording from a Miami restaurant. Now, to give you a backstory on that, at one point, in order to get everybody talking, the FBI did a kind of sting operation. They had an undercover officer go up to Donna Adelson, Charlie and Wendy's mother, on the street, pretending to be an associate of Rivera. This happened after Dan's killing, and handed her a news article about Markel's killing. And written on it was $5,000 and a phone number, making it look like a threat or blackmail. So the FBI agent said to Donna, "We want to make sure that you take care of what he's going through, like you're taking care of Katie and Tuto." Tuto was a nickname for Garcia. Now, again, the hope was that they would do this. This would stir the pot, and Charlie and Magbanua and Donna, they would all start talking and slip up. Well, right after that happens, Charlie and Magbanua meet at this restaurant, Dolce Vita. The conversation's recorded by police. And Charlie says things like, quote, "If they had evidence, we would have already gone to the airport," seemingly thinking this could be the police behind the bump incident. And he also seems to suggest we either pay off the blackmailer or kill him. So Adelson's arrested on April 21st, 2022. He's charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of murder. That took years for him to finally be arrested after so much suspicion on the Adelson family's involvement. In fact, Wendy has been named an unindicted co-conspirator in the plot to kill her ex-husband, Dan Markel. But yeah, Charlie's arrested. Luis Rivera, he ends up pleading guilty to second-degree murder. He receives a 19-year prison sentence. It runs concurrently with another sentence he has. He testifies against Garcia and Magbanua and Adelson, as you'll see in a moment. Sigfredo Garcia, whom Rivera claims was the actual shooter, he was convicted of first-degree murder of Markel, sentenced to life in prison. Magbanua, she had a trial that ended in a mistrial. She goes to trial a second time. She is convicted across the board of murder, conspiracy, solicitation. She's sentenced to life in prison. With all that in mind, now we have the trial of Charlie Adelson. Let's start off with the opening statements. First up, Georgia Kappelman, prosecutor, and she talks about some of the points of evidence that I mentioned, particularly the comments made by Charlie Adelson.
After Dan Markel was killed on July 18, 2014, law enforcement interviewed Wendi Adelson. And Wendi Adelson acknowledged that her family had a motive to kill Dan Markel or to want him dead. She admitted that her brother, the defendant, had even said that he looked into hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel as a divorce present to her, but he decided to buy her a TV instead because it was cheaper. So, as they're examining the phone records in this case, and the phone calls always went from Donna Adelson to the defendant, then from the defendant to Katherine Magbanua, then from Katherine Magbanua to Sigfredo Garcia, and back the other way. Charlie Adelson never calls Sigfredo Garcia, or vice versa. So if this is a murder for hire, as law enforcement suspects, could it be that the defendant was wisely insulating himself from the actual shooters by having Katherine Magbanua act as a middleman between them? The evidence will show that Katherine Magbanua went to the defendant's home the night of the murder, where he paid her in cash. And the next day, Katherine Magbanua paid Garcia and Rivera their cuts of the money. When discussing the possibility of whether this is actually some gangster trying to blackmail his family for money, the defendant is worried that this guy is not going to go away, that he's going to keep coming back for more and more money. And the defendant offers a solution to have this blackmailer killed. And he says he's willing to pay whatever it takes. The defendant tells her that, this is the defendant talking to Katherine Magbanua, this guy, meaning the blackmailer, is effing with him and his wife. And you'd better kill him or he's going to be a big problem because he knows who you are. And the defendant then says, if he can't handle this, I'll have somebody else do it. The defendant says, so help me God, if they with my family, it's going to be Nazi because this will be done. I mean, Katie, I don't care what I spend.
Okay, so the prosecution laying out for the jury what to expect in this case, how the pieces will tie to Charlie Adelson as the mastermind behind this murder for hire plot. We want to thank Morgan & Morgan, the largest injury law firm in America, for sponsoring this video. Now, before you say, oh, great, another law firm ad, first of all, how dare you? Don't speak that way of Morgan & Morgan on your phone. Well, now the defense, in their opening statement, I will say, shocked me. I think it shocked a lot of people because they came up with a theory that I don't recall them ever laying out before, that the reason there is this payment of money, the reason you have Adelson saying all this weird stuff on tape to his mom and Magbanua is because he is actually the victim in this case. He is the victim of an extortion plot.
So yes, guys, now you heard what the state said happened, and you'll see the evidence, you know, the damning evidence in this case, the phone calls, the texts. Guys, you will hear it. And Charlie's defense, in my opinion, is so out there. It's entirely unbelievable. I mean, there is just, it's crazy. If, and, obviously the jury didn't believe it, right? Which is what was important. But you guys are not going to believe how the defense tried to lay this out. Let's continue.
Let's hear Adelson's attorney, Daniel Roshbaum, lay it out.
What you're going to learn is that in the spring of 2014, it became apparent to Katie that her dreams of financial security with Charlie were not going to work out. You will learn that Katie heard the hitman joke. You will learn that she heard the $1 million offer and she got some ideas in her head. She says that a friend of hers had shot Professor Markel. She tells him over and over that she had nothing to do with it. But these people, she was talking too much. And her friend and these people learn about the problems that his family was having with Professor Markel. As you can imagine, his life has just forever been altered. He asked, who are these people? She won't tell him. You will learn that Charlie Adelson was told if he didn't pay within the next 48 hours, he or one of his family members would be next. You will learn that Katie repeatedly said that she had nothing to do with it and acted distraught. You will hear how she said that she would help him. You will learn about the initial payment. It wasn't $100,000. It was more than $100,000. He took out everything he had in his safe. You're going to learn about that. The state doesn't know it.
So in other words, Charlie's not behind the plot to kill Dan, but he was wrapped up in this by the real killers. And even though he didn't know it at the time, he would come to realize that his girlfriend, Magbanua, was the mastermind of the extortion plot. Okay, now we heard a lot of interesting evidence during this trial, like the initial 911 phone call from Markel's neighbor, testimony from the medical examiner to see what the cause of death was, what the manner of death was, how he was shot in the head and face. We heard from an FBI special agent going through the evidence, tying the co-conspirators together, including that Magbanua was receiving money from the Adelson Institute, but there was no evidence she was ever employed there. Very suspicious. But one of the main highlights of the trial, arguably some of the most important evidence in the case, was the secret recordings from law enforcement. So, for example, the jury was played this video of the infamous bump sting operation. Remember, where an undercover officer goes up to Donald Adelson on the street? Let's watch.
Excuse me, Mrs. Adelson? How you doing? Just want to give you this. Listen. You're scared. Don't be scared. Listen, just want to let you know that we know that your family has been taking care of Katie and her friend Ruto for quite some time after your problem up north has been resolved. And I want to let you know that my brother, he's incarcerated. He helped your family with this problem you guys had up north. And we want to make sure that he's going through some rough times. We want to make sure that you take care of what he's going through, the way you're taking care of Katie and Tuzo. Well, this will explain it. Thank you.
And the idea was, well, this is a way to get people talking and hopefully they slip up. Here's the secret recording of the conversation between Donna and her son, defendant Charlie Adelson, after this happened.
Is the person like threatening you or anything?
You never know how to interpret these things. So let's not worry, and let's meet tomorrow. I think that's better. Let's meet tomorrow afternoon.
All right, let me ask you this. Do you want to take a picture of the letter and send me what someone sent you?
No, not really. I don't want to do that.
So it wasn't the government or the military or somebody, just some random person.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Look, there's a reason that people believe Donna's a part of it, even though she hasn't been charged. Does she know what this is all about? Why is she being so secretive and careful? I mean, at one point, there is a recorded conversation between Donna Adelson and this undercover agent where he is trying to get her to admit the family's involvement in Dan Markel's death. He's asking for money.
Okay, so keep in mind that at the time of this video, Donna had not been charged yet. Okay? She has now been charged and she's going to go to trial. But at the time of this video, she had not yet been charged.
I don't know your friend who is in jail. I don't know what he looks like. I've never met him. I'm sorry your friend's in jail, but I don't know what that has to do with me.
You know exactly what it has to do with.
I don't know who Sacco is. You don't understand.
We know you don't know who Tato is, but you know who Katie is. And you know the contacts Katie has. And she has, listen to me, let's stop around. The bottom line is you know who the Katie is.
Look, I don't.
I no more than this. No, I'm not around with it.
Here's what you need to do. You need to go and.
Don't tell me what to do.
It isn't me. You have got the wrong person. If you want the money, you should get it from the police. They can give you a whole lot more than you're asking me for money for someone. I can't do this.
Yeah, Donna's role in this or non-role in this is fascinating. We could talk about it forever. But of course, it is the recorded conversations between Charlie Adelson and Katherine Magbanua that were particularly important for the jury to hear. Like here, they're talking about how after the bump, a letter was sent to the Adelson family, and then someone calls Charlie's dental practice, again, asking to take care of Rivera's family. This is all law enforcement. Adelson, Magbanua, they didn't know that. But Charlie ends up having a conversation with this undercover agent, and then he reports back to Magbanua what that conversation was about.
He referenced Katie and Tuto.
So it's their name again.
Yeah, so your name and some other guy's name, I don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so he was saying he was talking about Tuto, which I don't know who that is. There's two people I don't know. And he was talking about your family, saying your family's being helped out, which I don't know. I mean, other than the hours I give you to go up on the office on the weekend and take care of you.
Exactly.
But I do that can help you out. You for the money on the weekend. And he sounded, honestly, he didn't sound Latin. And he sounded like there's a little bit of New York accent that is tough. He's like, okay, do the right thing. Which do the right thing. Do the right thing. You sound like a cop that's fishing, that's or an investigator or someone's playing games.
Yeah, so one argument there is, does it look like he's covering his tracks, saying, I don't know what this guy's talking about. I was just taking care of you, Katie. Nothing to do with murder or anything nefarious, right? But speaking about Katherine Magbanua for a moment, she testified in Adelson's trial. And what did she say? Well, during her trial, she said that she had no involvement in the murder. She testified to that. She ended up getting convicted. Now, Adelson's team is blaming her, right? Saying she was trying to extort Adelson. So let's hear what she had to say now.
Did you have a trial in your case?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you testify?
Yes, ma'am.
You testified on your own behalf.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And when you testified, were you truthful with the jury?
No, ma'am. I was not.
What was your defense when you were tried?
That I had nothing to do with it.
Was that true?
No, ma'am, it was not.
Were you in the middle?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
So why tell the truth now?
I believe that the truth needed to come out now so that the family can get some type of closure.
Why didn't the truth need to come out last year or the year before or the year before that?
I was trying to defend myself.
You were trying to get off.
Yes, ma'am.
Has anyone promised you anything for your testimony here today?
No, ma'am.
Weren't you originally offered immunity for cooperation in this case?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
But you didn't take us up on that
No, ma'am, I didn't.
because you thought you could get off completely.
Yes,
Right?
ma'am.
Who came up with the idea to kill Dan Markel?
Charlie.
When did the defendant first bring this idea up to you?
My first recollection was around Halloween of 2013.
Around Halloween or on the actual?
On Halloween, yes, ma'am. He got in the car with me and he asked me a question.
What was the question?
Do you know anybody that can harm someone?
And did you know anybody that could harm someone?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
So that's massive. Big 180. I was involved. It was Charlie who started this whole thing. I lied in the past. I'm telling the truth now. Pretty incredible. Not surprising if you think about it, because according to her, it was Charlie's fault that she and Sigfredo are going to spend the rest of their lives in prison. It was his idea. In my mind, it looks like if we're going down, he's going down. But here's Adelson's defense team pressing her a bit.
So, isn't that interesting, guys? I mean, she lied in her own trial. She did not take immunity that was offered to her, not once, but twice it was offered to her, guys. Twice. And she refused it. She said she refused it because if she gave up Charlie, then she had to give up Sigfredo, and Sigfredo is the father of her children. That's why she refused immunity. So what do you think? I mean, I guess at this point she has been convicted. She's in jail for life. Right. She has nothing left to lose by telling the truth now. Sigfredo's been convicted. Is it just that, well, we went down, he's going down too? Maybe there is a little bit of that, but maybe she feels that way because he is guilty? Let's listen to some more.
Pretty soon after you got arrested, you were offered to cooperate against Charlie Adelson and the other Adelsons, and you would get to go home to your kids, right?
Yes, sir.
If you took the state's deal, then you would have been let out of jail immediately, right? That's what your lawyers told you.
If I took their deal? Yes, sir.
But you didn't take the offer.
No, I didn't. Well, the deal was to give up Charlie.
And you couldn't do that.
Because in order to give up Charlie, I had to give up Sigfredo, the father of my children. So I couldn't do that.
The real reason you didn't cooperate, and you made it clear, is because Charlie Adelson had absolutely nothing to do with the murder of Professor Markel. Isn't that the case?
I didn't cooperate because in order to give up Charlie, I'd have to give up Sigfredo.
Well, let's talk about the testimony in your first trial. You were asked, do you have information that Charlie Adelson was involved in this? Answer, do I have information? I don't have personal information. Do you recall that?
No, sir, I do not.
You don't recall saying that in your first trial?
No, sir, I do not.
Would you like to see a transcript of it?
Yes, I will.
Does that refresh your recollection that that's
Yes.
what you said?
Yes, sir, it does.
We believe her, we not believe her. Which brings me to another major question of credibility, a huge witness, Wendi Adelson, Charlie's sister. So while she has not been criminally charged in connection with her ex-husband Dan Markel's murder, she is considered by investigators to be an unindicted co-conspirator in the plot. And as you will see, prosecutor Georgia Kappelman wasted no time in grilling her on her alleged involvement and poking holes in her brother's defense.
Were you involved in any way in the plot to kill your ex-husband?
Absolutely not.
Did you know it was going to happen, but maybe not know the details?
I knew nothing.
Is that why you went to the crime scene on the day of the homicide?
I did not go to the crime scene on the day of the homicide.
Have you ever privately confronted your brother about his role?
She just lied right there. because she did go to the crime scene on the day of the murder. So that was a lie. We found out after. Keep in mind, I know I didn't state it at the beginning, but Wendy was having serious issues with Dan. They were in court. They were having serious child custody issues. She wanted to leave Tallahassee and go to wherever her parents lived in Florida. And she actually did leave, but the court ordered her back to Tallahassee. The judge did not give her permission to go. And, you know, that is standard. If you want to move away, and it's a significant ways away, if you want to move a significant ways away from, you know, the town you were living in when you got divorced and away from the biological parent, you have to get the court's permission. And she did not. Excuse me.
Role or possible role in the murder?
My attorney has advised me not to have conversations with anyone in my family about the case.
You suspected your brother could have been a part of this, right?
I suspected lots of people could have been a part of it.
But he was one of the people, right?
While I was talking with law enforcement for 6 hours, terrified out of my mind, I offered them every possible idea I could come up with.
Right. And one of the possible ideas was that your
So here's my thought on this. She was in interrogation and they were asking her, you know, who do you think could have done this, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things that she said was a statement that Charlie Adelson, her brother, had made after her divorce. He had stated, I was going to get a hitman for you, but it was cheaper to buy you a TV. And she told the police this, right? Now, if you were in her position, would you offer that up if you didn't believe that your brother was guilty? I mean, I don't know that I would offer that statement up. Even if he said it, I don't know that I would, because I would be like, no, you know. And she did say to the police that, you know, she didn't think he could do that and that he just has bad jokes, blah, blah, blah. But I'm wondering if she didn't throw him under the bus because she didn't want to be implicated in this. Just a thought out there, guys.
brother could have murdered your child's father.
I didn't really believe that was possible.
When did you learn that Katherine Magbanua was blackmailing your brother for the murder of your ex-husband?
Today.
Your brother has known who killed your child's father, and you didn't know.
I did not know.
How did the killers in this case know that Dan Markel was planning to leave town the day after the killing?
I have no idea.
You knew he was planning to leave town the next day, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Did you convey that information to anyone?
Absolutely not.
Do you want the culpable parties held accountable for murdering the father of your children?
Absolutely. I'm grateful they're already in jail.
But not if it's your family.
It's not my family.
Did your dad get any big gifts for his 70th?
I don't remember.
Was the murder of Dan Markel your dad's big gift?
I mean, that's, of course not. That's a horrible thing to say.
Tense. Very, very tense. Now, the big players didn't end there because, as we have seen in other trials, we once again heard from the state's star witness, Luis Rivera, in this trial. Now, the man who took a deal to testify against his co-conspirators, the man who was there when Markel was murdered.
Who was driving the green Prius on, like, whenever you were following Mr. Markel right before the murder?
Me.
Tell us what happened when you got to Mr. Markel's driveway?
Well, he had turned he turned the block before. We kept going, so we went in front of his house. So when he pulled in, we pulled in right behind.
Pulling behind him, what happens next?
Garcia jumped out and shot him
How many times?
twice.
Where was he standing when he fired the shots?
Right in front of the driver's side, right in by the driver.
Did you see what the victim did during this attack?
He put his hands up.
I know he's testified before, but it is always chilling to hear Dan Markel's last moments. And then Rivera ties all the players together.
All right, so do you know why Garcia or how Garcia came to know about this murder or this job?
His girl,
Who's that?
Katie.
All right, so am I correct that Katie hired Garcia and Garcia hired you?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was to get the money once the job was done?
Katie.
All right, and did she get the money?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where she got the money from?
Mm,
Do you know where she got the money from?
Yeah, the people.
Who are the people?
The dentist. I called them the dentist at that time.
The dentist?
Like Wendy and her brother.
Oh, have you ever had any kind of contact with any?
Isn't that interesting? He fingered Wendy. You know, how did he know about Wendy? Right? My serious question here, guys, is she going to be is she going to be charged after her mother's trial? I mean, it just keeps going and going and going and going. Right? First, it was Sigfredo and Katie. And then Katie had another trial because the first one ended up in a mistrial. And Louis, Charlie. Next is coming Donna. Are we going to have a Wendy? I don't know.
Any member of the Adelson family?
No, ma'am.
During the time that Katherine Magbanua was dating the dentist, were you around her during that time?
I mean, I've seen her a few times.
During the times that you saw her while she was dating the dentist, did she ever brag to you about the dentist at all?
No, ma'am.
Did she ever tell you the dentist has a lot of money?
No, ma'am.
The dentist has a safe full of cash in his home?
No.
So do you even know who the dentist is? I mean, do you know who he is here
Never
in the
met
courtroom?
him. Never met him in my life until today.
So you hear prosecutors fighting back against this defense that Charlie Adelson was the victim, that he was extorted after the murder of Dan Markel. But that didn't stop Adelson's defense team from questioning Rivera about whether or not it's possible that this was an extortion plot. That was the motive, and you just were kept in the dark. Because as he admits on the stand, he was lied to about a lot of the details. So clearly a lot has been said about Charlie Adelson, a lot of evidence tying him to the murder plot of Dan Markel. But with this new defense of extortion in the mix, the only person that could really prove that or show that is, of course, Charlie Adelson. He had to take the stand. So it shouldn't have been a surprise when he decided to testify.
Caused the death of Professor Dan Markel?
Absolutely no.
Did you hire anyone to kill him?
No.
How do you feel right now?
I'm really nervous.
Why are you nervous?
My whole life depends on it.
So he says he didn't have any part in this. And one of the things that he tried to do was to explain away a lot of his bad comments, like the infamous TV comment that he made to his sister after the breakup between her and Dan, where he said buying a TV was cheaper than hiring a hitman. Not a great comment to make when your former brother-in-law is actually murdered by hitmen. But here's his position.
Now, do you recall making a joke that buying her a TV was cheaper than hiring a hitman? Something to that effect.
Yeah, it was. Want me to say what?
Yeah, tell me what the joke was.
What happened was, when I gave her the TV set as a divorce present, it was the stupidest thing I ever said in my life. And I said, I was going to get you a hitman, but the TV set was a lot cheaper, so I went with the TV set instead. And I said it as a complete joke, and it was stupid. but I do that a lot.
Did you make that joke to others?
Yes.
Did you make that joke many times throughout 2013 and 2014?
I made that joke when she was having problems and she was fighting and she was upset. I recycled the joke, and it was stupid.
Did you ever say that joke to
I would say it was stupid, right, guys? Why, if you're innocent, why would you recycle that joke over and over and over again? That's my question. Why would you do that? It makes no sense to me. I can't understand. And he told other people the joke. You know, I really don't believe in coincidences. Her husband was unalived by a hitman, murder for hire. So that was just a little bit too close to home.
Katherine Magbanua?
Yes, I did.
So he makes that joke, says it's stupid, wasn't nefarious because he told that joke to a lot of people. Did you catch who else he said that to? Katie. That's important because what else does he claim he told Katherine Magbanua? Well, at one point, there was this offer to Dan Markel from the Adelson family to pay $1 million to him to allow Wendy and the children to relocate to South Florida. Now, Charlie insinuates that maybe he spoke a little too freely with Katie, not just about the problems his family was having, but about how much money he has, because he told Katie about this $1 million offer. She said, well, you're going to have to get a loan, right? He's like, no, I got the cash. I can pay for it. And that, according to him, was his downfall, because that laid the ground for his defense. He claims that after he was shocked to find out Dan was murdered, he invites Katie over. And then, according to him, she shocks him once more with some news of her own.
We sat down on the couch, and she started to talk to me. And she said, listen, this is all my fault, but I had no idea anything was going to happen, but this is totally my fault. I spoke in too much detail about your family's personal problems, about your sister, Dan Markel, and the $1 million offer.
What did you say?
I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, my friend killed Dan, and he wants to be paid $333,000.
Wow. So Magbanua comes out, right out, says, I know who killed Dan. This is my fault. You got to pay up, though. I spoke too freely about your money, your family's problems with Dan. These killers took it upon themselves. They killed Dan. Remember, we never heard this before this trial. So what was his response when Katherine Magbanua apparently said this to him?
How did you react?
I was like, what did you just say? And she's like, my friend killed Dan, and he wants you to pay $333,000. I'm like, who did this? Who's your friend that did this? And she's like, I don't want to say. I can't say. And I said, who was it? And she just kept saying, I'm not going to tell you. And I was like, was it Sigfredo? And she's like, no, I'm not telling you. And I just walked in my bedroom, sat down on the edge of my bed, and I'm like, Katie, I'm not going to be part of this shit. Like, I'm not going to be part of paying for a murder. This is insane. And she's like, look, if you don't pay in 48 hours, they will kill you. And I said, Katie, I feel like I'm getting extorted now.
How did she respond to that?
She got really mad at me. She got angry. And she's like, look, I'm not extorting you. She's like, I got dragged into this the same way you got dragged into this. She's like, it's my fault for running my mouth the way I did, but I'm not extorting you. Like, I'm trying to help you. So she's like, she goes, what are you going to do? You're going to go to the police? She goes, you go to the police, they'll kill you. You don't have a choice. Just pay the money. I said, Katie, I don't have $333,000 in cash. I said, come take a look. And I walked over to my safe. I opened it up. I'm like, here, take a look. I took it out in piles and put it on the dresser next to us. And I said, go ahead and count. That's not $333,000.
And did she count it?
Yes, she did.
How much money did she count?
$138,000.
So it wasn't 100,000, it was 138,000.
Correct.
So he pays her. They end up working out a payment plan for the future, and then he has her sleep over. The woman who essentially ruined his life. I mean, again, even if he didn't think at the time that she was directly a part of this, according to this story, according to her, she spoke too freely. She messed up. She got him into this mess, and he has her sleep over.
Yeah, right, guys? She just told him that she spoke about all their problems. Now, they're supposedly dating, right? And she talks about all of his problems with his sister's husband and blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, who would even get it in their minds that they should go and unalive somebody? I mean, who would do that unless they were contracted to do that, asked to do that, right? And then he lets her sleep over. Well, he let her sleep over because they were in it together. His whole defense doesn't wash, in my opinion.
Does that make sense? He then goes on to say that he tried to go on acting normal, but here's the kicker. He ends up telling his mom, Donna, about the extortion because, according to him, if he should be killed, at least someone knows what's going on and the police will know where to turn. But think about that for a second. It's too dangerous for him to go to the police with this extortion plot, but he ends up telling his mother, putting her life at risk, wrapping her up in all this. Does that make sense? Well, prosecutor Georgia Kappelman didn't really think so, and she grilled Adelson on this.
Have you ever heard the saying that the simplest explanation is always the most likely? Have you heard that?
I've heard that theory before, yeah.
Was your explanation to the jury over the last little over a day the simplest explanation?
It was the truth.
You have a thorough explanation. Would you agree with that?
I told you what happened.
And she highlights how his behavior after this really isn't consistent with someone who's innocent and is being extorted, but rather someone who's a co-conspirator.
The text messages that were exchanged between yourself and Katherine Magbanua on the morning after this exchange of money were inconsistent with your extortion theory.
They were inconsistent with how I was feeling.
They don't appear to look like you just gave her $138,000 under duress, do they?
She told me the last thing she said to me before she left the house is, can we just pretend like this never even happened? So when I sent her that message, I was trying to show her, like, I'm trying to forget all about it.
The text messages aren't what they appear to be. It's a beautiful day. I'm going to the pool. I'm going to the beach. I'm going to the gym. None of that is what it appears to be. It's something else.
I absolutely did not go to the gym. I was trying to show her that I was, pretending like nothing ever happened and looking past it.
And there's nothing on the wire. All those hours of you talking, there is nothing on the wire about the extortion, this layer 1 of extortion, because she told you not to talk about it, right?
She told me to never talk about anything to anyone or her.
What's the purpose of keeping Katie happy? Was she going to sick the Latin Kings on you if you made her unhappy?
She was protecting me. I didn't know what would happen. And she was keeping my mind, like when the extortion never went up. And I just assumed, I thought that she wasn't part of it and she was protecting me. I was trying to do nice things for her.
Did you offer to buy Katherine Magbanua and her mom a cruise?
Yes, Katie had mentioned to me that she always wanted to be able to take her mom on a cruise.
So does this all sound like he was trying to keep his co-conspirators happy so they wouldn't turn on him? Or was he just being a nice guy? Did he really think Katie was protecting him from the extortionists? He was also questioned on what he said in secret recordings between him and Magbanua.
It sounds like you're saying even if they track down the Prius, even if there's DNA or fingerprints in the Prius, meaning like they can link someone to the Prius, That's not going to be enough evidence to make any arrests in this case. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. What I was saying to Katie is that the information she had just told me in the car about Sigfredo not being there when the crime was committed.
Wouldn't it be good for you? Because you know now that Sigfredo is the extortionist, right? She just told you that in the car?
Sigfredo, yeah.
Okay. And wouldn't it be good for you if the police investigation into the Prius led to the arrest of the killers / extortionists?
If they arrested the people that killed Dan,
Yeah.
I know the extortion would stop. As long as I kept my mouth shut, I'd be safe.
Right. So why are you trying to argue to her that like the car is not going to lead anywhere? They're not going to be able to do anything with the car.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I know that Sigfredo wasn't the one who killed him.
You gave very precise instructions to Katherine Magbanua on what she was to say when she calls the phone number, right?
Yeah,
Did you do that?
Absolutely.
And then you say, quote, "You'd better kill him because he's going to be a big problem. And he knows who you are. If he can't do it, I'll have someone else do it." Aren't you telling her that if Garcia can't handle this problem and kill whoever's behind this, you will have someone else do it?
You're reading it totally wrong.
It's a yes or no question, sir.
No, you're wrong.
And she also presses him on why he never came forward with this truth, especially if Garcia and Rivera were arrested. Isn't the danger over? If you originally thought Katie was innocent and was put in a bad position like you were, why didn't you tell the truth when she was arrested? You let her rot in jail. He said, well, was never asked to come forward, thought the truth would come out. Now, one last thing I'm going to call out in this cross-examination, the glaring question, why would the extortionists or killers do this?
Why did Garcia and Rivera, or whoever did it, I guess I should say, why did whoever did it need to kill someone to extort you?
You gotta ask them.
Well, why couldn't they just come put a gun to your head and say, "Give me all the money in your safe"?
Thank God they didn't.
Yep. Why couldn't they? If they knew that he had all this money, why would they go to the bother of unaliving somebody for him? Right? I mean, Charlie Adelson's story is so out there. Like I said, it's not believable at all. Right, guys?
Thank God they didn't.
Thank God they didn't. I would have gotten killed.
I still don't get how killing Dan Markel advances the ball for them to extort money out of you. Do you?
Yeah, I have a theory. They could extort me for life, and I don't think they knew exactly how much I had in the safe. She knew I had a lot of money in the safe. But this way I could get extorted for life, and that's what happened. And I was stuck paying $3,000 a month.
But you could have gotten extorted for life just by the threat of death by Latin King, couldn't you, Doctor?
I mean, this was as real of a threat as you get. I mean, these guys aren't messing around.
Well, after the cross wrapped up, both sides rested their cases, and we heard competing closing arguments from the state and the defense. And I will say this, I say this all the time, I'm going to say it again. This is the last time for each side to persuade the jury to their position. Closings are so important. Here's Georgia Kappelman for the prosecution.
What is alleged is that the defendant solicited Katherine Magbanua to commit the murder. He conspired with Katherine Magbanua to commit the murder with her, and that the murder was accomplished with the defendant guilty as a principal because he hired and paid for this heinous work to be done. The statement reveals that the defendant wasn't scared of Katherine Magbanua and her associates. To the contrary, he was boastful. He was bragging about it. He was the big man who was going to solve his little sister's problem, make his mom proud, and get away with it because he was thinking of everything. He was untouchable. Because if push ever really came to shove, who are you going to believe? An oral surgeon or a gang member?
So that's a sampling of the prosecution's closing argument. And then we heard Daniel Roshbaum for Charlie Adelson.
Payment evidence. Miss Kappelman mocked in her cross of Charlie that this was a murder by layaway, meaning that doesn't make any sense. We agree with her. It doesn't make any sense. Murders for hire are not
and unaliving by layaway. That's just so funny. But that's kind of what happened, right? When you do layaway, you put what, 10% down or whatever, right? At least 10%. You put a chunk down, and then you pay so much a monthly. He gave them $138,000, which is a good chunk of money. And then he was paying out $3,000 a month. Unaliving by layaway, guys. Wow.
not done by layaway. But you know what is done by layaway? Extortions. By the way,
gosh.
If Charlie's part of a murder, they're telling you how smart he is. Does it make any sense that he would create a paper trail of checks from his business to pay for the murder? It makes no sense. The bottom line is, Charlie Adelson was conned. On the night of the 18th, he was scared. He didn't think she was part of it. He thought she was protecting him.
After about 3 hours of deliberations, the jury came back with their verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the Second Judicial Circuit in and for Leon County, Florida, the state of Florida versus Charles Adelson, case number 2016 CF 3036B, verdict. Count 1. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder.
Convicted across the board. Murder, conspiracy, solicitation. I mean, there you have it. 9 years after Markel's murder, the mastermind has been convicted. In terms of sentencing, while his sentencing is set for December 12th, he faces a mandatory of life in prison. Now, what does this mean for the rest of the Adelson clan? Will anyone else be charged? We're going to have to wait and see. There is one more wrinkle, though, with the Adelson case. We have learned that after the verdict, according to the defense, they filed a motion requesting the judge interview the jurors because apparently an alternate juror contacted the defense and said that a group chat might have been started up between the jurors. If that is true, and we don't know what was talked about, but it's problematic if they were talking about the case before deliberations. So the drama does not end in this saga, but we will always cover any update in this case for you. That
So, kind of interesting there, especially about the jury. I'll have to look that up. But crazy, right? And yes, we do know that Donna has been charged. Will it stop there? I'm beginning to think, Wendy, was Charlie the mastermind? What did Donna have? I mean, other than knowing about this, I don't know. This is a case that just keeps on giving, guys. Stay tuned for episode 8. And I'm going to share with you my grannyism for today for this video. If they can't answer your questions without getting defensive, they are hiding more than just answers from you. So remember that as we're listening to cases. I'm kind of specifically thinking about the Sebastian Rogers case. they can't answer your questions without getting defensive. They are hiding more than just answers from you. Interesting, huh? All right, guys, stay tuned for episode 8. We're going to delve into some of the testimony that was given in this case. Okay? All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you that stopping and viewing this case. Please hit the like button. I really would appreciate it. Hit the subscribe, share, and have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching another episode of Granny's Crime Busters. We really appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget to subscribe and like and even share the content. You can follow us on any of our other social media platforms at YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We really appreciate you guys, and you can also email us at grannyscrimebusters@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.